You pray, but you feel nothing. You call out, but only silence answers. This isn't a sign of failure, it's a sacred trial. One saint mastered this dark night, and his wisdom reveals the secret to finding God in the silence. Every soul that is serious about the spiritual life will, at some point, encounter the desert. It is a place of profound and painful silence, a time when prayer feels empty, God feels distant, and the consolations of faith seem to vanish. This experience is known as spiritual dryness, or aridity. It is one of the most difficult and misunderstood trials of the interior life. Our first instinct is to panic. We think, I must be doing something wrong. God has abandoned me. I have lost my faith. But the Church, through the wisdom of its greatest mystical doctor, teaches us that this silence is not a sign of abandonment. On the contrary, for a soul that is striving for holiness, it can be a sign of profound spiritual progress. The great master of this arid landscape was the 16th century Spanish Carmelite, St. John of the Cross. It was he who mapped this desert and gave it its iconic name, the dark night of the soul. His timeless wisdom reveals that this painful darkness is not a punishment, but a purification, a profound act of love from a God who is drawing a soul into a much deeper and more authentic union with himself. The stakes of understanding this are our very perseverance in the faith. Misunderstanding spiritual dryness leads to despair and giving up on prayer. Understanding it, through the eyes of St. John of the Cross, gives us the hope and the strategy to endure and to emerge from the trial with a faith that is stronger, purer, and more unshakable than ever before. St. John of the Cross explains that there are two kinds of dark nights. The first is the dark night of the senses. This is the one most commonly experienced by those who are growing in their faith. It is a purification of our sensory and emotional attachment to prayer. In the beginning of the spiritual life, God often gives us many consolations. Prayer feels good. We feel His presence. We are moved to tears by a beautiful hymn or a powerful sermon. These feelings are good gifts from God, but they are not God Himself. The danger is that we can become attached to the feelings and start to worship the consolation instead of the consoler. The dark night of the senses is the period when God, like a loving mother weaning a child, withdraws these sensory consolations. He does this not to punish us, but to teach us to love Him for His own sake, not for the good feelings He gives us. The primary sign of this night is a general and persistent inability to find any taste or pleasure in spiritual things. Prayer becomes a chore. Meditation is impossible. The soul feels lazy and lukewarm. Imagine the taste of ash in your mouth when you are expecting the sweetness of honey. That is the taste of prayer in the dark night of the senses. So how do we know if this dryness is from God, or if it is just our own laziness? St. John of the Cross gives 3 signs to discern if you are in this purifying night. First, you find no pleasure not only in spiritual things, but also in worldly things. You have lost your taste for the things of the world as well. Second, you are frequently and anxiously thinking that you are not serving God, and you have a deep desire to please Him. A soul in simple lukewarmness doesn't care. A soul in the dark night cares very much. Third, you are unable to meditate or use your imagination in prayer as you did before. It feels like your mind is a blank wall. When these 3 signs are present, St. John says, the soul should be at peace. It is not going backward. It is being led by a new and more spiritual path. The second, more profound and much rarer trial is the dark night of the spirit. This is a purification not of the senses, but of the very spirit, the highest part of the soul. This is a trial reserved for souls who are being called to the highest states of union with God. In this night, the soul feels utterly abandoned by God. It is a profound and terrifying sense of emptiness, where the soul is tried by temptations against the virtues of faith, hope, and charity. It is the experience of Jesus on the cross crying out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" This is the purifying fire that prepares the soul for divine union. But for most of us, the battle is fought in the dark night of the senses. What then is the strategy for survival? St. John of the Cross gives simple, profound advice. First, persevere in prayer, even when it feels like a waste of time. Do not give up your scheduled time for prayer. This is the moment to prove your love for God is not based on feelings. You show up, not because it feels good, but because He is worthy of your time. This is the prayer of pure faith. Second, do not try to force yourself to meditate or use your imagination as you did before. If the mind is blank, let it be blank. Simply remain in a state of quiet, loving attentiveness to God. This is the beginning of a higher form of prayer, contemplative prayer, which is a simple, loving gaze upon God. The only sound in this prayer is the quiet, steady rhythm of a heart that continues to beat with love for God, even when it can feel nothing. The wisdom of St. John of the Cross is a lifeline in the desert of spiritual dryness. It reframes this painful experience from a sign of failure to a sign of God's purifying love. He is teaching us to walk by faith, not by sight, to love with our will, not just with our emotions. He is detaching us from our own spiritual achievements and teaching us to rely completely on Him. The silence of God is not an absence, but a different kind of presence. It is an invitation to listen more deeply, to love more purely, and to enter into a darkness that ultimately leads to an unimaginable light. For more wisdom from the great saints and doctors of the Church, subscribe to our channel. The path to God is not always easy, but the Church has provided us with the maps we need for the journey.